Earlier this week, when I was preparing to fly to Milwaukee, I really didn't want to go. I've been traveling for the last several months, speaking and teaching on mental health, helping businesses to build better culture in their companies and in their nonprofits. And I was pretty tired, pretty burned out. I had to get up at 4 a.m. on a Sunday after the holiday and travel to Milwaukee. Not for a paid client, but I was paying for additional training. And I had to ask myself, do I really need it? I'm already doing pretty good. I am booking out engagements. I am helping companies. I'm doing it. I'm winning. Why do I need more training? And I mulled that over for quite a while as I was hemming and hawing on whether or not to take that flight. And I decided that I needed to do the hard things. That if I really wanted to be a master in my craft, I couldn't just rest on my past success. I had to continue to get better and better and better. I had to do the hard things. I had to get up at 4 a.m. to catch that flight to Milwaukee. And I could have just gotten on that flight and chilled out, watched a movie, caught a nap, but I didn't. I got into work mode. I decided to do more hard things. I wrote an entire ebook on scaling in the aircraft on my way to this event. When I got here a day before the event started. I could have hung out in the city, went shopping at the mall, caught a movie, but I didn't. I sat at my computer and I spent 3 hours building a 7-minute speech, doing the hard things. Now, some people will tell you that you can just get on stage and you can wing it. What I will tell you is if you truly want to be a master in your craft, whatever that is, you have to do the hard things. You have to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. Getting up at 4 a.m., staying true to your regimen and doing your daily devotional and studies, your morning routine. Taking every extra minute that you have and dedicating it to your craft. Now, that's not for everybody. Not everybody wants to be a master in craft. But if you do, that's the dedication that it takes to do the hard things. And welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm your host, Sergeant Q, and with me today is Kasey Maiorca. He is our producer for the Mental Health Janitors, the guy behind the camera, behind the scenes, making all of this stuff possible. Welcome, Kasey Maiorca, to the big screen.
Hey, thanks. This is weird. I don't like this side of the camera. I do and I don't. But
Hold on. You got me into podcasting all those years ago. You were on camera with me, and we were doing podcasts way back in the day in your studio, in your house.
Yep.
So you're really the pro at this. You got this whole thing started, 7-8 years ago?
Yeah, it's so funny. I keep seeing those pop up. And we did the Thrive podcast, and it was just it was a great little podcast about people that are out there, doing their thing, And one of the fun parts was I didn't have a co-host, but I almost did because we must have had you on there, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. But it was always fun. Like, man, when Q was in the house, dude, it was a good time. And so it really broke me into how to set this up. I did tons of research because that's just the type of guy I am. If I'm going to do something, I go in full force. And so you don't know anything about that, but but it was a lot of research and same thing. We were able to start when we did the first episode. Don't watch the first episode of Mental Health Janitors till you've watched all the others. Okay. However, that being said, we were at a way higher production value than Thrive was at back then. So it was always going up. But
so I tell people, though, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. Done is better than perfect. Get it out there and fine tune it on the way out.
Yeah. One of my favorite content creators, that's their motto was finished. What is it? Finished media is better than no media. And so, it's not to say that you want to just put garbage out. But that being said, someone like myself can get hung up on the littlest things. Oh, that light's just not right. Oh, there's just this little thing where 90% of your audience is not going to care. They want the information.
That's right.
Get it out there. You'll be surprised if you go back to these guys that have millions of dollars worth of equipment and they're paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to put out their media. Go back to their first posts and you'll be, woof, I never would have watched this guy.
That's right.
You got to start somewhere. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to get this far. And I think we've put together quite a good package and a good goodness between you and Jess. I couldn't ask for better content coming out. So that makes it the easiest thing. So if you're watching this, get the word out. Everybody wants this.
I think you're one of like 3 people who's watched every single episode, kind of because you have to.
It's true.
But I want to. You've watched all of our content. You've been there editing it. You've been behind the scenes. You've seen a lot more than all of the viewers have, actually, because you're in the room with us. Right. So what is I'm curious, I'm sure the audience is curious too now. What is your number one takeaway from everything that we've taught? And I know there's a lot of it, but there's got to be one thing that is your number one takeaway from this podcast.
Man, that's hard because there's a lot of stuff we've covered. And as you said, being one of the 3 that have for sure seen every episode, I was telling Q in the pre-show, the hardest part of this is I'll get that little nugget and we'll take that home. And my wife is also one of our diehard fans. And so she's seen every episode, mainly because she has to check for errors and stuff for me. But she still loves the show, actually. And it's so funny. We sit there and talk about certain things, and we've implemented so many of these topics. And so I was trying to think of like, what's the number one thing? And honestly, I think it's almost a tie, but if I got to pick one, it would be do the hard things, working on that ACC. I mean, it's funny you opened with that story. We didn't talk before this episode about, those things. He was just like, hey, just think about some of the stuff that you've done and you've taken away from the podcast. And that was the first thing. And sure enough, that's what he opens up with. And we've been talking about it a lot, but honestly, it's because it's such a big deal. I mean, passing through one big thing can make a huge difference. And I'll give you the example. For me, it was just recently over where we're at, there's the turkey trot on Thanksgiving Day. And it's a 5K. And back in September, my girls and my wife were like, hey, we're going to do this. And the girls were like, do you want to come, Daddy? And I'm just like, oh, man. No, I don't want to, but I would love to spend time with you guys, and I would love to go through the experience with you. And so I reluctantly said yes. And, it was going back to actually what the number 2 thing I've taken out is, combating the negative bias. That was a big thing we hit very in the beginning. We probably should come back and visit it because it's a big deal out there right now. So easy to get into the negativity. Pumped out there constantly.
Especially because of the election season.
Yes.
Dude, that is so good. And we didn't talk about either this election season because there was just so much stuff out there already. It was the way that they run negative ads and how they use that negative bias to try to win votes. We didn't even talk about that, or election fatigue. I mean, there's so many things, but you're right. We should definitely talk about that, Kasey. That's a great point.
Yeah, we need to come back around because I mean, negative bias is just being able to take that negativity and it just spirals. And what we've talked about is how much positivity it takes to combat that negativity. Problem with that is the problem with the negativity is it's so easy to just spiral down. One negative thought spurs another one. So now just that extra negative thought you now have to come up with and remind me, I'm sorry, was it 5 or 10?
So between 5 and 7.
5 and 7, yeah. So that was
Yeah.
between 5 or 7. So let's just say worst case, you got 7 things. You add on one more negative thing, you got to come up with 14, especially because it's not the same thought. One negative thing gives birth to something that's related to it, but totally different. So you're now having to combat it with so much. So the best thing to do is to try to just get that thought out of your head and go positive as quick as you can. So coming back to the turkey trot, we get there and it's 30 degrees outside, finally got up to 32 by the time we went walking. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? I'm crazy. I don't like cold, and I'm just like, here we go. Okay, fine. I'm here. And then so I start to think, my mind wants to go to wow, they're going to find me a little ice cube on. No. That's not going to happen. You know what? I'm going to feel a sense of accomplishment when I'm done. And I just started pumping all that positive stuff in there. And what I found was, at first I did my little jog and then, it's me. Look at me. So I got to work on my health. And it's one of those things I'm working on, but I wasn't ready. I was not prepared to run a 5K. So I'm like, dude, I'm going to walk it. I'm going to finish it. That was my goal. And so, I did a little bit of a jog at first and then started to walk. And then every time that negativity wanted to come in, I'd start hitting it with positive. What felt like every time I hit it with a positive, my speed would go up a little bit. Next thing you know, man, I was just power chugging through this thing. And then, next thing you know, they're ringing the bell and they're like, you're halfway there. And I was like, really? And then all of a sudden, instead of like a negative of, my mind could have easily been, oh, I got to do this. What I just did, I still have to do. Instead, I'm like, oh, well, that was like no time. That means I can keep going. So it would spur me on a little bit more. And then you're running up on the hill and you're behind these houses and it's Thanksgiving morning and these people are out there in their nice, warm, cozy hot tub. And you're like, where my mind could go? But I got a hot tub at home, so I just got to get home and then I get to go enjoy the heat. So I can do this. So I'd spur on a little bit more. And the next thing you know, we're coming around the bend and there's the balloon arch and away we go. And, my wife even said, she's like, I wasn't expecting you so soon. I said, I wasn't expecting me so soon. So, definitely being able to take these things that I've learned, doing the hard things, like I have created such a positive experience. I've been able to strengthen my ACC in a way that it spurs me on to do the next thing. I've got projects all over the place we're trying to finish at the house. So the next thing you know, now I find myself picking it up and I'm like, you basically sit there and say, this is too much and you can get shut down easily. But instead, it's like, what if today I just got A done? And tomorrow I can do B. And it's amazing when you do these little things, you're getting those little wins and they add up after a while. And the next thing you know, you look back and you're like, wow, the project's done. And I thought I'd never get it done.
So if you're new here, let me break down a couple of terms for you guys. So let's talk about the ACC. So the ACC is the Anterior Cingulate Cortex. It's a small little piece in your brain, and it helps you to do hard things. Now, in most people, this part of the brain is very, very underdeveloped because as humans, we want to seek comfort, the path of least resistance. We don't want to do the hard things. If we're uncomfortable, then we want to not do that. What the ACC does is when you do the hard thing, doesn't matter if you win or lose, but when you do the hard thing, that area of the brain will grow a little bit bigger, allowing you to do the next hard thing and the next hard thing and the next hard thing. Now, when they study the brains of special forces operators or professional athletes, that part of the brain is enormous. because they've spent their life challenging themselves to do the hard things over and over and over and over again. So what does this mean for you? If you want to be successful at any area of your life, you have to put in the work. You have to do the hard things. You have to get out of your comfort zone. People say it all the time. Growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. And that's exactly what Kasey was just talking about. Doing the hard things grows that area of the brain. It's like a muscle. If you want to be able to bench press 200 pounds, if you tried with 200 pounds, it's probably not going to happen. So you're going to start at 100 pounds and you're going to work up to that 200. It's the same thing with challenging yourself to do hard things. That builds the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex. So that's what we were talking about right there, just to frame it for you guys. Now, when we talk about the negative bias, this is not a part of the brain, but this is a function of the brain. This is how the brain operates. Now, this is a survival instinct. It was built into our brain to stop us from doing stupid stuff that will kill us. So here's the example. If we see a bear in the woods for the very first time, and we think, oh, nice bear. One of our friends goes over there and pets it and then gets mauled and killed by this bear. That creates a negative bias in our brain about the bear. Like, yeah, I see that furry thing. I'm not going near it because JoJo over there got smoke checked by this bear last time. That creates the negative bias in our brain. So it's designed to keep us alive. Now, a more real world example would be something like this. Now, if you're in the audience and you're listening, odds are you've probably drinking some alcohol before. You've drank some alcohol. Now, some of you, maybe not all of you, but some of you maybe overindulged on a specific type of alcohol when you were much younger and less responsible. And I'm betting you that if you smelled that alcohol today, the one that you overindulged and maybe got sick on, I'm betting that your body would have a visceral reaction to this alcohol because your body recognizes it as poison and is trying to protect you to keep you away from that alcohol. Now, that is how it is supposed to work. But here's what happens. The negative bias can also be a detriment to us when it comes to relationships. Here's a great example. If you have a negative experience with a friend or family member, it's going to be weighed 7 times higher than a positive experience. So a lot of us probably spent some time this last weekend with friends and family with Thanksgiving. And there's probably some relationships there that were strained. And if you really think about it, there probably wasn't a lot of negative experiences that happened that strained those relationships. It was probably just a few. But what happens is your brain recognizes those negative experiences, and then it wants to pull everything else that's like that. Even if it was a minor negative experience, your brain just categorizes it with that. And it builds, we call it building a mountain out of a molehill. Your brain creates this entire negative narrative around this individual and this relationship because you had a few negative experiences. I believe this is one of the number one reasons why couples grow apart or get divorced is because no one has taught them how to regulate this negative bias. So when their spouse does something that offends them or makes them angry, they don't reconcile that. They just park it in their brain. And then the next time and the next time and the next time. And so it just builds up. Now, when you're walking into the bathroom and your wife has left all of her stuff laying out on the counter, left her wet towel on the floor, your brain automatically pulls up all those other negative things and just kind of dumps on you. And now you have this negative bias toward your spouse over something that is really benign. Here's how to overcome it. When your spouse does something that frustrates you, it's a minor annoyance, but it frustrates you, I want you to stop, look, and listen. I want you to stop what you're doing. I want you to look at this situation as a whole, and I want you to listen to my voice right now. I want you to pick 3 or 4 positive things that you love and appreciate about your spouse. And I want you to remember those things and recall those in the moment. Now, I don't do a lot of counseling because I don't really like it, but I have done some. Now, this is when a veteran comes in and they're complaining about their spouse, I literally put them through this exercise. They'll tell me something the spouse did that's benign. Now, we're not talking about like cheating or drug addiction. We're talking about something very benign. And I will tell them, okay, man, I'm sorry that happened. I understand how you feel. I want you to tell me, like, give me 5 things that you appreciate about your spouse. And as they go through that, by the time they get to that 4th and 5th thing, they're laughing, they're smiling, because I've helped them overcome that negative bias. And I do this on a regular basis. And I know my wife does it on a regular basis because I do tons of stuff that annoys the heck out of her. But we've learned how to self-regulate. We've learned how to do this. So that way, when that minor annoyance comes up and I'm just like, oh, my wife, she loves shoes. She loves them so much that they are all over the house. I pick up 3, 4, 5 pairs of shoes a day. I don't know how she wears so many, but she does. That could drive me absolutely nuts. It could start a fight. But I've learned how to self-regulate. I go through this exercise as I'm picking up the shoes and putting them away. In the grand scheme of things, it's minor. But if I allow it, it will create a negative bias in my brain, cause friction in the marriage, and things just get out of control really quickly. So it's a very long-winded explanation, but I really want you guys to understand what the negative bias is about and how the ACC works. Because those are the 2 things that Kasey said were the most valuable for him. So I want to make sure I'm doing a good job of it. All right, you guys, if you love this content, make sure you like and subscribe. Send us your questions or your concerns. Let us know what you think of the podcast. Share it with your friends. Because our job here is to always educate, empower, and encourage you on your mental health journey. So for the Mental Health Janitors, I'm Sergeant Q.
I'm Kasey. We're out.
And we're out.